Hello everyone. Welcome, one and all, to Little History. Raptoris, Strawberry J, Jeremiah, Ranger Anonymous, welcome. This dude, Wolfie, Squeaking Squirrel, and everyone else who is here, welcome. This music is interesting. This music is a bop. Like, we're gonna talk a lot about the music in this game, because I think it's super interesting. But it is Mirage's menu music, and it is an absolute banger. Now, I want to start off with, a poll. Because I'm real curious. How much historical background people are coming in here with? So we'll let that run for a bit. As you tune in, feel free, right? This is entirely just your own vibes, so as much or as little as you feel like saying. I just want to get a sense of how much you all actually know going into this, because, you know, it's a weird time period, right? My vibe is that, unlike basically every other Assassin's Creed game, people really don't know what Baghdad in the time of the Abbasid Caliphate is like, and have almost nothing coming in, which is totally fine. It's just, as a historian, it's a bit weird. In the meantime though, to introduce myself, I am Adam. I am actually a professional public historian. I work at a university rare books library, and so my job is to help researchers find the materials they need for the things they're working on. My background is in medieval history. I have a master's degree in medieval Scandinavian studies, a BA in medieval studies, and a master's of library science in cultural heritage. I'm also a published author on the use of video games as a way to learn about and think about history. I just recently, actually, about 2 weeks ago, we had a book come out in Bloomsbury Press that I contributed to called Playing the Middle Ages. So, as far as it goes, this is my specialization. I focus the other side of the world, or the other side of the Eurasian hemisphere, but the 9th century is an area of my specialization, and so for about the last month here, I have been doing a heck of a lot of research. And if I remember to open up said research document, that'd be awfully helpful, huh? Exactly, Jakista. Assassin's Creed is widely known for choosing the big historic periods, right? They even make fun of this in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, right? Make fun of themselves by being like, you know, gender roles in 15th century India isn't that time period they want to do. But, like, I mean, one, that still rules. Black Flag devs, I'm still mad about that. Give me that game. But at the same time, right, this, much more than, you know, pirates, trends into that less known, less obscure, but super duper interesting time period. So I am super duper excited. I also want to say though, this is a Ubisoft game, and so, you know, as always, as more news about the historic and ongoing scandals and workplace culture issues that Ubisoft broke over the weekend, remember, we support the developers who are working to create a better Ubisoft, and we support that movement. Those who enable a toxic workplace don't deserve to be celebrated, but the devs have put in a massive amount of work to try and make this place better, and to try and make the way that that comes through in their games come through clearer. So, to all the developers at Ubisoft, Ubisoft Bordeaux, and other studios around the world. Thank you for that work, and we stand with you. Alright. So, thus far, about halfway through the poll, not at all and just a little bit stand out. We got one person who feels pretty good about it, and we have no Islamic historians in chat so far. Islamic historians, if you are in chat, please sound off, and also please correct me. Like, I've done my homework, but at the same time, there is a lot of time period to know here, so please do correct me as we go through if and as I get things wrong. But here's the plan for today. We are gonna start off not with the game, but with a bit of background. So I have a presentation put up because, you know, that's clearly what we all come on Twitch to do. Is to watch PowerPoints. But I'm gonna go over kind of the story so far for medieval Islam. So, from the 7th century, with its origins in the Arabian Peninsula, up to and through the anarchy at Samarra and the Zanj Rebellion, the setting of the game. So we're going to go over that background to give everyone a starting place to take a look at AC Mirage properly. You are a musicologist, but this is very much not your area of focus. But we are happy to have you, Dapper Brass. Look, musicology, every time I hear someone talk about musicology, I'm like, this is the coolest thing. And then I try and do it, and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I can play music reasonably well, but I can't do musicology. It just something does not work. And there is a general thing from this dude. Is it really that surprising that they have North Americans and Western Europeans have a blind spot about their almost prototypical other? That's right, chat. As we get into the game, we are going to have an Edward Said counter, and I will explain who Edward Said is. So, we're keeping an eye on it. That being said, is it Algebra Man? We are gonna get a mention of Algebra Man. I don't have a meme of Algebra Man though. Chat, if you have memes about Mr. Algorithm himself, send them to me in the Discord. We'll introduce who that is. But no, Edward Said is the coiner of the term Orientalism. He's a super important theoretician for understanding European interpretations and social movements towards the Middle East. Published in the 1970s, but was socially active up until his death in 2003. So, you know, his theories have been nuanced a little bit, but still a fabulously important scholar in the broader post-colonial movements in social studies and in Middle Eastern studies, and we miss him. Alright, before we hop into our lecture, one final thing. If you are enjoying this and this is your first time here, firstly say hello. Like, it's more fun when we're hanging out, chatting, being active, posting memes. So please do hang out and participate. But if you want to be notified for all of the Assassin's Creed Mirage streams that are going on between now and Monday, make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss a scrap of this historical content. And if you want to support the channel further, consider subscribing, using your Prime subs, or gifted subs, cheered bits, all of that. Helps you unlock a fabulous suite of emotes, all taken from real historical artwork from all around the world, from the 7th century to the 19th century. So, you know, the best collection of real art memes for you to spread around in your emotes. You can also head over to patreon.com/ludohistory, where for as little as $2 a month, you can also keep this happening for this, Total War Pharaoh, and all other historical games that we do here. Now, without further ado, I think it's time we have some PowerPoint content. What do you say? By the way, it's so beautiful. It's gonna go hide away for a bit, but it is so beautiful. The riveting action we are all here for. That's right. The historical background. So, the story so far. This game completely snuck up on you. You're so glad it already came out, and also a feck yeah for the PowerPoint content. So, our story so far could go back almost indefinitely far. You know, to understand the Abbasid Caliphate, you must first invent the universe. But we're going to start off in the early 7th century. Didn't know you need more PowerPoint, Alien? But apparently you do. Hell yeah. The answer, of course, to how much Islamic history you know is a bit. Oh, the game volume is loud. Game volume is no longer loud. Okay, that was maybe a bit too low. That's better. We're gonna let that simmer in the background while we're talking. So, this is 632, but we need to start a little bit earlier than that. Around about 600. Right, we have basically two major empires operating in what is now the Middle East. We have the Byzantine Empire, pretty much at its apogee in terms of its power. Right, it is as big as it's gonna get. We are, just like a generation after Justinian. It stretches from the ruins of Carthage all the way out to modern Iraq. The other big place is the Sasanian Empire, or the Sassanid Empire. The English uses both. It stretches from the kind of Iraq-Syria border nowadays, sort of in that region, all the way out into modern Afghanistan. And it is incredibly powerful. Its capital in Ctesiphon is one of the largest cities on the planet in 600, and the palace or the libraries founded by Khosrow II in the start of the 7th century are among the most advanced places of learning in the world. They are also, in many ways very similar empires. They're both claim heritage back to Hellenic Greek culture. The Sassanids trace their way back to Alexander the Great. They're not actually related, but they claim that relationship through one of his generals. And the Byzantines do the same. Meanwhile, down here, right, we have a lot of stuff going on. For the most part, we're looking at very small, semi-nomadic tribes. Around some of these towns, these tribes are more or less settled down. So, specifically, around the town of Mecca. The Quraysh clan has settled down and is the dominant keeper of the massive shrine known as the Kaaba there. And it's really important, right? While modern scholarship thinks Mecca is a much smaller trade town than was traditionally thought, traditionally it was thought that Mecca around 615 is a massive stopping point for the East African maritime trade. So there are trade routes that run all the way down the coast of Africa, down to modern Mozambique, that head up and travel to Egypt and then Ctesiphon. And it was thought Mecca is one of the major stopping points and distribution hubs along that trade route. That's no longer particularly believed. In fact, it's probably mostly a pretty local trade hub, focusing a lot on furs, people. Unfortunately, enslavement is very common, etc. in this period. But it still is the most prominent city in the Arabian Peninsula, and the Quraysh clan gets massive power relative to the other nomadic, or sometimes called Bedouin, tribes of southern Egypt, Kush, will become Ethiopia a bit later in the Middle Ages, and then Yemen and the Arabian Desert. In the Quraysh clan, a certain Muhammad ibn Abdallah is born around 570. And he is the great prophet of Islam. Right, in 620, he supposedly receives a vision incredibly intense given to him by the Archangel Gabriel. And the revelations that he is given are the centerpiece and, in fact, the vast majority of the Quran. Turns out, suddenly claiming that you have been visited by God, and that everyone in your own family or extended family is doing religion wrong and desecrating the Kaaba, makes you very unpopular. And so in 622, Muhammad is evicted from Mecca, and he and his rapidly increasing band of followers emigrate to the city of Medina, which was not originally known as Medina. It becomes known as that because that's the Arabic word for city. So, it is the city of Islam. Hello, Hino. So, the city is the foundation of the Islamic community in 622. This community, known as the Ummah, is, well, it is the original Islamic group. Is this East Asian art, or are you culturally blind? It is Safavid Persian. So this is a manuscript from the British Library, and it is, I believe it was produced in modern Iran, near Tehran. So, there's a bunch of... You've seen several illustrations from this manuscript. They're gorgeous. Safavid art is so damn good. Like, universally, unbelievably good. I am such a big fan. And while I know very little else about the Safavids, they're way after my time period. So darn good. They were good at art, guys. Anyway. Muhammad. In between 622 and 630, Muhammad wages war against Mecca and much of the rest of the Arabian Peninsula. And in 630, he captures the city and, quote-unquote, cleanses the Kaaba. Upon doing so, he establishes a tradition that's known as the Hajj, one of the main pillars of Islamic doctrine. The Hajj is still practiced to this day, and the Kaaba is the, if you don't know it, it's the big black cube in Mecca that millions of Muslims travel to every year. That is based on an event from 630. Muhammad, at that point, has basically successfully unified much of southeastern Arabia and Yemen, and starts making incursions and raids upon the Byzantine Empire in the borderlands that you can see right around Petra. Muhammad dies in 632. But before then, this is, I think, also around 630, shortly after cleansing Mecca, we get this event depicted in this manuscript. The Archangel Gabriel appears to Muhammad and teleports him from his bed in Medina to Jerusalem. And he sees there, right, the spot where the Messiah was prophesied to become, and from there is raised up in an event known as the Mirage, and is shown heaven. This depiction, right, the Mirage is the last major prophecy in the Quran, and is, I mean, there is no equivalent to the apocalypse in Islamic thought, or to, I should say, the Book of Apocalypse in the Quran, but this is kind of the future, the showcase of what it will be like after paradise emerges and all evil is destroyed. It's a good time. I'll be very curious to see if we get references to the Mirage in Assassin's Creed Mirage, right? As much as I want to say that Mirage is just, ooh, it's the desert. Ooh, there's mirages in the desert. Oh, look, it's such a good, it's like Ragnarok and Valhalla, it's like the two Viking names, but it's for the desert. It could actually be a really clever reference to a really important event in Islamic thought, and they could do something really thoughtful with that. So we'll hold off judgment. Anyway, an important thing to know for this early period of Islam is that religion and politics really aren't distinct. Right, Muhammad was an incredibly skilled diplomat, and incredibly good at earning people's loyalty and manipulating that loyalty to bolster his own power. So much so that, right, when the Ummah is founded in Medina in 622, that's going to be year 1, right? So you'll sometimes see, and I'll be curious to see in the game what they do, you'll see sometimes year AH, that's year al-Hijra. The Hijra is the expulsion from Mecca and the move to Medina, and so that becomes year 1 of Islam. And so the time period of the game is actually the 3rd century going into the late 3rd century of AH, even though we call it 861 to 800 or to 870 AD. And throughout this period, all the way into the 9th century, or the 3rd century AH, political authority is derived from your relationship to the Prophet. This becomes a big deal in a couple hundred years. Around about 750, this is going to be a big deal. But keep that in mind. Next up, Muhammad dies in 632. And so there's a problem, right? What do you actually do with the leader of your community no longer being there? Enter the Rashidun Caliphate, or the Rashidun Caliphs, I should say. They aren't a single entity. Basically everyone, not yet, the Islamic schism's coming down, right around there. But for the first 30 or so years after the Prophet's death, we're doing okay. The first one is the Prophet's father-in-law, Abu Bakr. And then an early ally, Umar ibn al-Khattab. And then after that, we get councils of the leaders of the most prominent men in the Islamic community come together in a council known as a shura in order to choose the next leader. Hey Zoe, good to see you. First they choose Uthman ibn Affan, who is alright. They like him well enough. And then he starts meddling in things and trying to adopt Sasanian political authority and just exile people he doesn't like. And then they stop liking him. And then he gets stabbed about it. And then they have to choose someone else. And, I mean, Umar also got stabbed about it. There's a lot of assassinations in Islamic history, actually. Turns out there's a lot of assassinations that go on. Yeah, let me find them. Yeah, Uthman gets murdered. And so at the council, they choose. Let's see. Yeah, they choose Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is deeply unpopular, and one of the youngest widow of the Prophet, Aisha, leads an opposition faction against Ali. As part of this, she and her allies nominate the Caliph Muawiyah, or the future Caliph, Muawiyah. Sorry, Arabic is not a language I can muddle through a tiny smidge of it, but I don't know it well, so I'm relying on the Anglicization on that. We're giving PowerPoint content, I gotta wear a tie. So, in this civil war, a lot of things break. This is known as the first fitna, or temptation, or trial, or challenge. It's bad news bears for everybody. Right, Arabic is a beautiful language. I love it dearly. I am just also very bad at it. So, you speak Lebanese Arabic. Well, Vacant Chief, I apologize for my pronunciation. The little bit I learned was Moroccan Darija, and just even less modern standard Arabic. So, I'm gonna do my best, but I'm sorry in advance. So, big takeaway, right, for our purposes, thinking about the 9th century and the Abbasids, is that the fitna is the origin of 3 major Islamic sects. Sort of. Particularly, this is where the Shia Islamic sect comes from. The Shiites believe that Ali ibn Abi Talib is the rightful caliph, and that his deposition by al-Muawiyah is illegitimate. And everyone after al-Muawiyah, up through, depending on which sect you believe, either the Abbasid Caliphate or through to most of the present, is illegitimate. And that in later periods, starting in the 9th century, this solidifies to be not just someone of the Prophet's family must be the caliph, but rather a direct descendant of Ali ibn Abi Talib is the rightful caliph. So, the leader of the Shia Islam is known as the Imam, which just means teacher, but in the Middle Ages, they say, the Imams are, for the Shia, are also the political leader of them as a political entity. This period is also the origin of a problem group who is going to be super duper relevant for this game, the Kharijites. The Kharijites hate al-Muawiyah so much that when Ali ibn Abi Talib sends an envoy to negotiate a peace treaty with him, they walk out of Ali's camp and refuse to come back. So Kharija, right, the name Kharijites comes from, or Kharijia, I should say, is coming out of an Arabic word that means to depart, kharaja. And so they leave and proceed to do rebellions about it for a very long time. The image on the previous slide here, also from the British Library, at the Battle of Nahrawan, is Ali beating the crap out of a bunch of the main Kharijite movement of this period. So, those who defected from his camp, he kills both of their leaders at the Battle of Nahrawan, and fully decimates them. They proceed to regularly come back. We'll meet them again later. The Sunni Islam as a doctrine emerges in the 10th and 11th century. Matthew Gordon, in this handy-dandy book right here, which is the short version, I'm giving you the very short version of the Rise of Islam, This is the regular short version of The Rise of Islam by Matthew Gordon. Speaks of the main body of the Ummah being proto-Sunni in this period. Round about the 9th century is when we start getting theological and doctrinal differences, as well as political differences between these various sects. And in the present day, right, they are radically theologically different, while both being Islamic. But they have their origins in a succession crisis, yes, you know. And that's neat. Yeah, the Kharijites are functionally no longer relevant. There are still Kharijite populations alive today, but they're not very big. We're also before the big medieval development, which is the Ismaili movements. So, to jump ahead a couple hundred years, right, the Assassins, right, from Assassin's Creed 1, and, you know, this entire franchise, are an Ismaili movement, which are a radical jurisprudence sect. They're particularly the Nizari, who are also born out of a succession crisis. Could doctrinal differences be influenced by the conquest of the Sasanians by any chance? I'm not enough of an expert to speak with a huge amount of confidence on this, but sort of. Right, Sasanian and Zoroastrian influence is going to keep showing up, but a lot of that happens early enough that it affects multiple factions. A lot of what's happening instead is different jurisprudence and different commentary traditions around the body of the Prophet's writings known... Oh, crap, did the name just escape me? Known as the Hadiths. Different commentary traditions emerge from them, and they follow different scholars, and that creates a lot of these doctrinal differences in the end. But yes, Sasanian influence is a big deal for this Age of the Caliphs, and I'm super duper curious what they do with that in the game. I know this, dude. It's succession crises all the way down. The Nizari, the Assassins, come out of a... They're named after a deposed Fatimid Caliph, and the direct predecessor to Salah al-Din. So, you know, it's just doctrine differences all the way down. Anyway, Ali ibn Abi Talib loses the first fitna. His loss means that Al-Muawiyah and his family become the caliphs of the entirety of Islam. And these are the Umayyads. They move the capital from Medina to Damascus. That they were the governors of Damascus. They were the governor of the Islamic province of Syria, I should say, before the first fitna. And they immediately moved the capital to Damascus, which is already their power base. And that's awesome. Did you miss the gameplay? No. You have not missed any gameplay. We are making sure everyone's caught up to speed on Islamic history. Because you can't just jump into the 9th century. We gotta start at the beginning. And Magistrate, thank you for the 21 months at Tier 1. We appreciate having you around, my friend. Alright, so the Umayyads don't rule for very long, right? All told, it's less than a century. But they are super important for the development of really the Islamic state. We'll get to the Iberian Peninsula. Because yes, but no. This game is going to be set in Baghdad, yes. And we will get to Baghdad. But Baghdad doesn't exist yet, and so we've got to get there first. Yeah, Baghdad is not a city in 661. There's fully zero... There's nobody there. So we gotta get towards it. We're close. The Umayyads do two super important things, though. Firstly, they adopt Sasanian taxation and administrative structures, though they do not like Persian as a language. They do their damnedest to get rid of Persian as a language. It's not a good time. But they love this idea that they can tax everyone from Morocco to Afghanistan and have money flow into Damascus's coffers. They love that idea, and they're going to adopt whatever bureaucracy is efficient to make that happen. So they also really heavily promote two policies known as Arabization, right? The love of Arabic as the governmental administrative language, and in fact the language that pretty much anything official, any scholarship, anything high status is going to be written in. They also promote Islamicization, so the relatively aggressive conversion efforts. This is an effort against religious diversity because there is a dumb amount of religious diversity in the 8th century, right at the turn of the 8th century, in the Middle East. There's a lot of stuff going on. So, they position it, of course, Muslims are at the top. Pretty much any government job, you've got to be Muslim. You are exempt from major tax if you're Muslim. You cannot... Okay, you are not supposed to be. Theoretically, you cannot be enslaved if you are Muslim. You have access to more support systems if you're Muslim. Basically, top of the pile. Below that, you're going to have people of the book, so the other Abrahamic religions. They are also called Dhimmi. Yes, that is how that's pronounced, I think. It's anglicized DH. I can't remember if that's a hard D or if that's a the sound. It might be a hard the sound, so Dhimmi. If you know Arabic, please help me. These are going to be Christians and Jews. Now, Christianity is also a mess in this period, because you have Byzantine/Orthodox Christianity. You have Latin Christianity, especially from Venetian and genuine merchants. You have Armenian Christianity, because the Patriarch of Armenia is a different person than the Patriarch of Constantinople. You still have heretics. We still have some Arians, right? Arian, the followers of Arius in the Middle East. We still have... Oh, we're getting to the Nestorians. The Nestorians deserve special mention. Heck. Who's the guy that Augustine's really mad at? Who's the sect that Augustine is super duper mad at all the time? My brain is failing me. In the meantime, we have Nestorian Christians who do their own thing. Yes, Pelagians. Manichaeans. Thank you. Thank you, Measures, on this, dude. The Manichaeans, are still kicking around. The Copts in Egypt are, getting a good foothold in. And the Nestorian Christianity is wild. There are early medieval Nestorian Christian communities in China. They are awesome. Were Copts a big thing back then, or were they considered Catholic? They were considered heretics. They're Monophysite. Instead of... So, they're considered heretics. So, we love that. The Latin Christianity has a lot of stuff. Look, I do not know enough about the theology of Nestorian Christianity to talk about it at length, but it is super duper cool. And there's big communities in Persia, there's big communities in modern Georgia, India, China, and that's awesome. There's also, a really sizable Jewish population. And I know we've already seen Jewish characters in the trailers for AC Mirage, so I am super excited to see that, because that rules. Then, below them, right, the next largest group of religious people, or the next largest religious group, let me just make that easier. The next largest religious group in the Umayyad Caliphate are Zoroastrian. In Arabic, they are often known as Majus, which is also used to describe any other pagan, which is really not helpful. But Zoroastrianism was the official religion of the Sassanid Empire, and really, by this point, only about 40 to 50% of the Umayyad Caliphate's territory was Muslim. So there's a lot of Zoroastrians around, and that's really cool. And then there's other paganisms, right? So you've got Slavic, right? Slavic paganisms, whatever the Rus are doing in this period. They're doing stuff, but that's fine. Is that where you get the word magus/mage? Yes, it is. It's originally exclusively refers to Zoroastrian priests, but quickly expands. You have some, not very many, but some pre-Islamic nomadic religions. You have Central Asian and Turkish religions that sort of become related to Tengri distantly. You also have Amazigh religions on the western fringes of the Umayyad Caliphate. Hello, you have come for Assassin's Creed's particular brand of nonsense. You've walked into a PowerPoint getting us all cut up to speed, and that's awesome. Yeah, Zoroastrianism never stops being a major religion in the Persian heartland, and while it never has a resurgence into dominance after the Sassanids, they're still super cool. We love them. Can we get a quick TLDR on Zoroastrianism? I mean, other people in the Discord server and in other Discord servers are much more equipped than I am, but basically it's a dualist religion, so it's not... In a lot of ways, modern audiences tend to see it as pretty compatible or, I guess, structurally similar to Christianity. But basically, right, there is a fight between Ahura Mazda and, heck. Arhaman, thank you. I knew it. I'm just having a words day. Ahura Mazda and Arhaman and their followers, and they exist in some sort of balance of conflict, and the goal is to help Ahura Mazda, because eventually that'll cause good things. So, quick rundown of the social hierarchy. Muslims are at the top. Government positions are reserved for Muslims. There's exemption from taxes, immunity from enslavement, stuff like that. And then you have other Abrahamic religions, Jews and Christians. Generally speaking, Jews are treated a little bit better than Christians are in the Umayyad Caliphate, but they're both treated as people of the book. And therefore, they're not wrong, they're just not there yet. And we need to help them get there. Below them, you have Zoroastrians, because they're just the largest group of people, and you can't piss them off too badly. And after that, you have various smaller paganisms who are often, right, a lot of those practices are brought in due to taking people as slaves and human trafficking. And remember, if someone converts to Islam, they can no longer be enslaved. So you don't want to convert them to Islam. You want to convert them to Islam, but you don't want to do it too quickly. And so that's where a lot of stuff, religious diversity in the period comes in. Anyway, the Umayyads are super unpopular, by the way. Something about that civil war. They're super duper unpopular. They also have another civil war in between themselves, between two branches of the family a little bit later, called the Second Fitna. So by that point, everyone's sick of their shit. And so ignore the fact that the map is in French. In the region of Khorasan, Persia, in the early 8th century, there are glimmerings of a Shia revolt in the works, and then that kind of gets co-opted by one guy, Abu Muslim al-Khurasani, who, near the city of Kufa, which is on the Euphrates River, unveils the black banners of Al-Abbas Abdullah ibn Muhammad, and proclaims the latter caliph. And this courts Shia people by just saying, like, oh, the Abbasids claim descent from the Prophet's uncle, Al-Abbas. So the Abbasids don't get their name from the first Abbasid caliph. They get it from their ancestor, who's the Prophet's uncle. And this is why they are the Abbasids. And they successfully navigate a really fraught military coalition, attack Baghdad, or attack Damascus, and murder all of the Umayyads except for one. That one, Abdurrahman I, escapes all the way to the recently conquered Spanish peninsula and sets up shop in Cordoba. His descendants are going to eventually proclaim themselves caliphs, and there is a delightful, absolutely wonderful Umayyad Caliphate in Spain, in Cordoba, through to about the year 1000. And my name is you, thank you for the Prime sub for 12 months. Whole year, good to have you around. I love the Umayyad Caliphate in Cordoba. They are so cool. Abdurrahman II kicks the shit out of some Vikings, which I respect. And Abdurrahman III builds one of the most remarkable mosques in the world in Cordoba, which is now officially La Catedral de Cordoba, but really is the La Mosque de Cordoba. We love them. Anyway, in 754, Abu al-Abbas dies. And he is replaced by the Caliph al-Mansur, who assassinates the military leader who put him into power. Very quickly. He knows what he's about. And what he's about is trust nobody. This'll be a feature. Sadly, the cheese part of it is apocryphal, but he did kick the shit out of some Vikings, and I respect the take. What's a little state-sanctioned assassination? Yeah. So, al-Mansur realizes Damascus is really not where he wants to be. If you look at the map of, at this point it still is much larger, right? Kairouan through all the way to Fez is still under theoretical Islamic control, but that's caliphal control, I should say. But that's going to change pretty quick. But he's like, I need a new capital. And so what does he do? He builds a new city. And finally, at long last, in 762, we get Baghdad. Originally, Baghdad Baghdad's a later name, even. Why make a whole new thing rather than renovate Ctesiphon? Because Ctesiphon's in ruins and you can't spend 50 million dinar on renovating ruins when you could build something brand new. This also lets him plan it out exactly how he wants. So al-Mansur calls Baghdad Al-Madinat as-Salam, the city of peace. Because he's like, no, we're done. We're done. He proceeds to continue to put down revolts throughout his entire reign, but we're done. And so he builds this magnificent round city over the next 4 years. This is going to remain the centerpiece of Baghdad through to the 13th century. It has a massive palace complex. It has a massive mosque. It originally has enormous markets and is surrounded by a huge wall with 4 gates in it. The gates later become known as the Basra Gate, the Kufa Gate, the Khorasan Gate, and the Nubian Gate. The Nubian Gate is named after one of its gatekeepers, who has the epithet Al-Nubi, He's enslaved and black, right from East Africa, but is the gatekeeper to the Round City in the 9th century, or in the 900s, I should say. And so the gate's named after him. But those set up the kind of the four northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest gates, and they're incredible. Thing is, Al-Mansur is rather paranoid, and it's worth quoting at length from one of our sources for the period. This is taken from the Tariq al-Rasul wal-Muluk of Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Remember that name? Let's see. According to Yahya ibn al-Hassan ibn Abd al-Khaliq, the maternal uncle of al-Fadl ibn al-Rabi, Isa ibn Ali complained to al-Mansur, "O commander of the faithful, it is tiring for me to walk from the gate of the courtyard to the palace, for I have become weak." And al-Mansur replied, "Have yourself carried." But he replied, "I am embarrassed because of the people." Al-Mansur said, "Is there anyone who continues to be embarrassed because of them?" But Isa continued, "Allow me, O commander of the faithful, what is allowed, one of the water-carrying camels." "Does any water-carrying or riding animal enter the city?" Al-Mansur then banned this. No one should enter the courtyard except on foot. When Al-Mansur ordered that the doors that led into the courtyard should be blocked and opened to the intervals of the arcades, markets were established in the 4 quadrants of the city, and so each one has a market. This continued until one of the officials of Byzantium came as an ambassador, and he ordered al-Rabi to take him on a tour of the city and its surroundings to see the development of the building. Al-Rabi took him on a tour, and when it was finished, Al-Mansur asked, "What do you think of my city?" The ambassador had got up on the walls of the city and in the domes of the gates, and he said, "I saw a beautiful building, but I saw your enemies with you in the city." The Caliph asked him who these were, and he replied, "The market people." Abu Ja'far al-Mansur was silent about it, and when the Byzantine official had gone, he ordered that the market be sent out of the city. He appointed Ibrahim ibn Khubaysh al-Kufi and attached Jawas ibn al-Musayyab al-Yamani, his freedman, and ordered the two of them to build the markets in the Karh area, and ordered them to make booths and houses for every trade and to hand them over to the people. When they had done this, he moved the market there from the city and imposed rents upon them according to the size of the structure. This is the foundation in 774 of the southern district of Baghdad, Al-Karh. Al-Karh is itself a fortified town, and there's actually a short distance between these two that in the 9th century has to be crossed via horse for the messengers. So you actually, boots all the markets out, they move down to Al-Karh, and you can get everything there. Additional markets will be founded in Dar al-Khilafa, here, around 892, including the probably largest market in the world, known as Souk al-Falafa, or the Tuesday Market. There it is. Souk al-Falafa. Additionally, we get originally, Al-Mansur's military is founded in Al-Harbiya, and there's just kind of more military quarters to the east of the city, or to the west of the city, I should say. Not a lot there. Al-Mansur continues to be paranoid about this, and so in 774, he builds another palace in Al-Khuld, and then shortly thereafter moves across the Tigris River to Ar-Rusafa, and builds his final palace complex there. This is where he dies, and his successors move back into the Round City. We can kind of skip ahead at this point, a couple of caliphs, to the most famous of the Islamic caliphs, Harun al-Rashid. Chat, have you heard of Harun al-Rashid? Yes, actually. Vaguely. Yeah, vaguely is about right. Sounds familiar. Have you heard of this book? The Book of the 1001 Nights. if you have, you know Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid is the caliph for the time period in which almost every single one of these stories is set. This is only 1/3 of the book, by the way. Just a heads up. It's a this edition is a 3-volume set. I only have this one, sadly. I didn't check, actually. Do I have Alibaba in this one? Malice of Women. I feel like I do. I should. Apparently I don't. I have Sinbad in this edition, but I don't have... I don't seem to have Alibaba and the 40 Thieves in here. Unlucky. Gotta say, it's pretty true to the text opening random page. Oh, I was in the table of contents. I didn't even get to, like, inside the thing. But, you know, I don't know, here on page 829, Harun al-Rashid and the Damsel and Abu Nuwas. Let's see. Abu Nuwas with the 3 boys and the Caliph Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid and the 3 poets. Harun al-Rashid and the 2 enslaved girls. The Caliph Harun al-Rashid and the 3 slave girls. Etc., etc. So, right, this collection, originates mostly in the 17th century, 17th century Syrian folktales that are then collected, by a couple of people, but who's the Frenchman? His name escapes me, but were collected by a French ethnographer in the 19th century, but they probably go back to at least the 17th century for significant bodies of the text. But they're all set in the 9th century, in the reigns of Harun al-Rashid and of his son al-Mamun. This is the period, right, in the around 815 to 830, or 810 to 830, I should say. Gaant, yes. That's who I was thinking of. This is the period where we have the most patronage of the arts, right? If you've heard anything about the Abbasid Caliphate, you're like, oh, the Islamic Golden Age, where we have all of this art, all of this learning, all of this everything. That's these two. Above all else, that's these two. Harun al-Rashid spends an exorbitant amount of money funding building projects around Baghdad. A lot of poetry composition. Abu Nuwas, who got mentioned here, is the most famous poet of the 9th century in the Islamic world. He's also horny as hell. Like, the man is so horny. Remarkable love poetry. But yeah, massive engineering projects, massive scientific projects, and al-Mamun, after, doing a bit of civil war, does the same thing. The largest observatory in Eurasia, or probably just the world, in the 9th century, is built in Baghdad, in the Round City, with al-Mamun's funding. He's an incredibly skilled diplomat. This scene is actually from a Byzantine manuscript, so it shows al-Mamun receiving a Byzantine ambassador. Al-Mamun was also very gay. Adam from the future here, I made one small error there. It is not al-Mamun who was the Caliph who was responsible for the indirect creation of the Ghulamiyya as a gender category in the Islamic world. It was actually his half-brother and predecessor al-Amin, who al-Mamun killed in a civil war. How did Abu Nuwas and al-Mamun being gay go? Reasonably well. For the most part, among the Abbasid and Umayyad elite, it was fine. Right? It was, not... There's weird power dynamics involved. But like, Abu Nuwas has very public affairs with government officials, and it's fine. It's super chill. It was well known and in public. Al Mamun manages to, well, his mother manages to invent a third gender. This one's a story. So Al Mamun, being the caliph, has a bit more obligation to have an heir than most people did. Thing is, he's super gay. So his mother, being weird about it, takes several hundred, right? Because, right, obviously his mother's original plan is just buy prettier women out of the slave markets and put them in his harem, and that's eventually he'll fall in love with one of them, right? That'll be good enough. Does it work? So the solution, according to Al-Tabari, is that she takes the most beautiful young enslaved women in his harem, and she dresses them up in the finest editions of the clothes that are the most fashionable among teenage boys at the time. And Al-Mamun is completely taken with them, of course, and has an heir, and that problem solved. Since he is the caliph, this becomes a trend, like the stylish thing, for Abbasid and slightly later Umayyad Iberian elite to do. Right, the idea that a wealthy, influential, enslaved woman, which that is not a contradiction of terms, that's just enslavement works kind of weirdly in elite contexts in the Islamic world. We'll talk about that more later. Dress up and act in very manly ways. Let me get the exact name for this thing that may or may not be a gender. Literally, whether or not it is or isn't a third gender is dubious, but the term in Arabic is rumaliyat. So, my note in my reference document is one might go, transmascrap pog. Remember that these rumaliyat were enslaved. Their gender nonconformity is forced upon them, and in Al-Mamun's case, was used against him to enforce heterosexual obligations. Nonetheless, there is definitely room for them to have their own agency and do that because they thought it was cool. But yes, the reverse does come true. Right, Rumaliyat and eunuchs kind of intersect in terms of gender presentation and performance, and so gender's tough in this period, and frankly we love that for them. So I'll be really curious to see how that gets presented in the game as well. Sadly, this background is all drag, yeah. Sadly, this background is primarily political, and so now we need to get to the actual events of the game. Because we are now in the 830s, so we're getting close. And Al-Mamun makes one colossal future fuck-up. Right? He ruins future Caliph's day. Because to start funding, or to start helping out with his standing army, he starts building a regiment of enslaved soldiers of Turkish origin, known as the Mamluks. The Mamluks are super important for Islamic history, mostly because they cause problems. In around about 830, 835, they are causing massive conflict in Baghdad. They are attacking, according to Al-Yaqub, another one of our sources, they are trampling over Baghdadi locals. There are a mass amount of intra-city strife about it, and the Caliph Al-Mutasim is like, this is a problem. This is a problem. And so he also has a bonkers amount of money and nowhere to spend it. And so he spends it by going up north. If we go back to our main map here, in between Baghdad and Mosul, like almost exactly halfway, he founds a new city, Samarra. Samarra is primarily a palace, right? That is its primary purpose. It is a palace, and it is military barracks. But, like, I need you to understand how rich the Abbasids are at this point. According to a 10th century source that is prone to exaggeration, Al-Mutasim's successor, Al-Mutawakkil, at the time of his death, had... Wait, let me get the exact number here, because this exact number is kind of a big deal. Not spoils of war, not Harun al-Rashid, not that. Markets, profits, wisdom, no. Then I overshot. Where is it? Wait, actually, where did it go? Somewhere in here. The gay story is mostly wrong. The gay story is taken from Al-Tabari. It's taken from our primary source. So, but please do feel free to elaborate, and we can have a talk about it. Here it is, the wealth of the Abbasid court, in the Kitab al-Hidayah, which is unknown, but probably an 11th century source. Okay, when Al-Mutawakkil was assassinated, total sum in his coin in his private treasury was 1 million gold dinars in cash and 50 million silver dirhams. That is cash. The pure weight of gold of 1 million dinars is equivalent to $250 million today. That's his cash on hand, yeah. So the Abbasids are dummy rich, and need to spend some money. So Samarra is an incredible city. The ruins of Samarra, unlike the ruins of Baghdad, survive. And so we know that there is incredible bevel geometry that builds up eventually to a style that gets adopted into Renaissance Europe as Arabesque. But incredible geometric designs, incredibly elaborated things. Here, the great minaret is built by Al-Mutawakkil. So it's a bit of a later addition, but it's pretty good. Samarra remains the capital of the Abbasids until about 890, when they move back to Baghdad. Exactly, right? It's not stupid rich according to modern budgets, but like that is a lot of money for a pre-modern state to have on hand. Because remember, the Abbasid treasury is the governmental treasury. There's not two distinct things. So, that is basically... Right, and that's probably slightly exaggerated as well. But, that still is... Right, the operating... or the cash-on-hand budget of the caliphate is still measured in the millions, verging on billions of US dollars in 861. What's wild, by the way, is that the treasury is going down fast. Right, the next events are going to really deplete that treasury, but as well as revolts on the provinces, ecological crises, etc., and increased corruption among provincial officials, is going to strangle the tax revenue coming into Baghdad and into Samarra. And so by 900, revenue is going to be 1/4 of what it is in 800. Anyway, speaking of the bad news at Samarra, Al-Mutasim's successor, Al-Mutawakkil, briefly flirts with the idea of building another city, Al-Mutawakkiliyah, because why be subtle about it? He abandons the idea, but then gets assassinated in a faction war between the Turkish military units. They appoint his son, Al-Muntasir, who dies after 6 months. His brother, Al-Mutaz, is passed over in favor of his cousin Al-Musta'in. Al-Mutaz goes into exile for a while, but comes back, and is like, I don't like that, and sets up shop in Baghdad. The governor of Baghdad is one of his allies, and ends up supporting him pretty thoroughly through this. So there's a war about this. Al-Musta'in is based in Samarra. Al-Mutaz is based in Baghdad. The Turkish officials, a second generation of them, I should say, because, the first two who assassinate Al-Mutawakkil get killed by Al-Mutaz. So, Wasif and Bira al-Kabir get killed, get killed by Al-Mutaz, and so their sons, Musa ibn Wasif and Muhammad ibn Bura, Saleh ibn Wasif and Bira's sons, Musa and Muhammad. My notes are wrong there. Take charge. Muhammad ibn Bura is captured in Baghdad, accused of embezzlement, and executed. Musa attacks Baghdad about it. Al-Mutaz is captured and is tortured to death. He dies 3 days after his capture. Almost certainly, euphemistically is called mistreatment, but is torture. Exactly. The Turkish military officials then appoint Al-Muqtadi as the caliph, and he rules for like a year and then also dies. The guy after him rules until 890. He makes it a bit longer and is generally ineffective. Long term, this wildly weakens the Abbasid Caliphate, and in about 925, a Turkish military provincial force, the Buyid family, captures Baghdad and appoints themselves as the de facto rulers of the Abbasid Caliphate. The Caliphate line is preserved, but they're puppets. The Buyids are actually in control. The Abbasid Caliphate limps on until the Mongol invasions in the 1250s. Then an Abbasid makes it to Egypt and remains a guest of the Mamluk Sultanate until about 1570, when the last of the Abbasid line dies out. So, with all of this, there's another revolt in the way. It didn't import right. We get a character from Assassin's Creed Mirage, finally. With the Zanj Rebellion. Starts in 869 in Basra with the works of Ali ibn Muhammad, whose picture sadly has not survived. Triangle exclamation mark himself. We'll see him in the game, don't worry about it. So what does Zanj mean? Zanj is a bit of a floaty term in our sources. Al-Masudi's geography is one of our most useful ones. But really, it seems to mean non-Arabic speaking enslaved workers. It might specify East African origin. The Zanj, in our later, more precise geographies, specified coastal Somalia into modern Kenya. So just south of the Horn, going along the coast. This is a major source for the Indian Ocean slave trade. So there's plenty of slaves taken from the Zanj, and then more taken from Mozambique and Madagascar later in the Middle Ages. But Al-Tabari and Al-Masudi treated as semi-synonymous with Sudan, which just means black person. And And so, really, it seems to refer to non-Arabic speaking enslaved, probably but not exclusively of African origin. The work they're doing in Basra is that they are clearing salt from the agricultural fields. Basra is an incredibly fertile place due to irrigation. Irrigation canals deposit salt, and so someone has to clean out the salt for the topsoil to be usable. That's the work that they're doing. It sucks. They are horribly mistreated. It's bad news. Ali ibn Muhammad, originally from, I believe, Qom in Yemen, is preaching in Baghdad in the 860s, gets evicted, moves to Basra, finds an audience there, and kicks off a 15-year-long revolt by the Zanj and their sympathizers against the Abbasids. Remember that religious sect from way earlier, the Kharijites? Yeah, they're coming back again. It's unclear the extent to which Ali ibn Muhammad believes in Kharijite doctrine, but he sure uses it. And what that actually means, right? The reason why this is so appealing is the Kharijites think that piety, and in turn political office, should be determined by the person who is the most skilled. That means freed enslaved people were eligible for high office. That cuts through a lot of Umayyad and Abbasid racialization and increasing levels of constriction as to who has access to high offices. They're like, no, it is the most qualified person. And so, formerly enslaved people could be eligible if they had the other qualities of a good, pious leader. You can understand why the Kharijites are not well liked among everyone else. Right? Right. Yeah. A little bit based. So, we're gonna see him in the game. You understand now why he's allied with the assassins in this. Yeah, the Zanj end up in Iran and China too. They're one of the ordinance for modern Afro-Iranians. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I should say, of course, right, I should have clarified that. Slave trades from East Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa more broadly do not just go to Basra. They go all over the place, and Iran and even further on the fringes of Greater Khorasan are absolutely places that had a market for enslaved workers of African origin, as well as enslaved workers of Central Asian origin, Turkish origin, Siberian origin, and Slavic origin. Yeah. And yeah, it goes all the way to Southeast Asia and Western, or in Eastern China, I should say, with all of those works. So good time. So, last thing I want to talk about, though, is our source material. Because I have a not particularly hot take. Assassin's Creed, narratively, works the best when we have a limited number of relatively detailed historical sources. Right? The more sources we have, and the more room for interpretation there is on a lot of the nitty-gritty events, the more Assassin's Creed struggles and just kind of makes up stuff to fill what it sees as gaps. But when we have really specific sources, they're just able to kind of spot holes in it and fit narratives into it. This is what makes Assassin's Creed Black Flag so good narratively. And I've got great news for everyone. We've got a very limited number of, like, historical textual sources for this period. We have the Tarikh al-Rasul wa al-Muluk by Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, also just known as the Tarikh al-Tabari, the history of the kings and prophets. A small, limited, easy to read, 40-volume work He talks a lot. The modern English edition of the Tariq al-Tabari clocks in at a smooth 40 volumes. Most of the events we're talking about occur in volumes 35 and 36. He is our best source. I quoted from him earlier, as he is quoted in here. And you can see why he is a good one for us, right? When he was talking about the Marquess of Baghdad in the reign of Al-Mansur, he names the sources, names who they're defended from, or names who they're related to, and therefore why they are trustworthy, right? He's very specific about people are saying things. Here's how he has heard that testimony. Here's how he's evaluating conflicting narratives. And so it is a big deal. The State University of New York Press is the publisher for the modern English edition. It's been going since the 90s working to translate this. It's amazing. Al-Tabari is called the great Abbasid historian, and he deserves it. The man is really, really cool. We also have a more geographical work by Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn al-Hussein ibn Ali al-Masudi, the Mirage al-Dahab, or Meadows of Gold. Al-Masudi is mostly doing a geography, so it's useful for a snapshot of a political moment and where the Abbasid world is drawing its political boundaries. He also has a gorgeous description of Baghdad that is heavily used in Gila Strange's description of Baghdad, which is what is used by the developers of this game. So, his description of Baghdad is super relevant. Oh yeah, right, absolutely. But Al-Tabari often specifies what he thinks is a strong story and what he thinks is a weak story. Not always, but a lot of the time, and we love that for him. Next up, our next big source, another historical source that talks about the Zanj Rebellion, is by Abu al-Abbas Ahmed ibn Abi Yaqub ibn Ghafar bin Wahb bin Wadi al-Yaqubi. Arabic names are a lot, guys. His Kitab al-Buldan. It's another geographical work, but he talks about the Zanj Rebellion. And so he's a relevant historical source. And then we have our boy, Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, the Surat al-Ard, the Book of the Description of Earth. Another geography that survives in one manuscript and one Latin translation. Hey chat, fun tangent. Take a guess. Where is this portrait of al-Khwarizmi from? Are you right remembering that Ibn means son of? Yes. You are absolutely correct. So it is Abu Ja'far Muhammad, the son of Musa, the Khwarizmian. So he's from Khwarazm in kind of north-central Persia. A stamp. This dude, somehow you got it in one. It is from a Soviet postage stamp from 1984. I got nothing. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. You're sorry, what? Yeah, it's a Soviet postage stamp in 1984. What's the problem? I also want to show you all some of our actual sources, because I'm lucky enough to work at a library whose name I have conveniently covered in these photographs that has 8th and 9th century Arabic manuscripts. The actual texts in these are not important; they are not relevant to us. But I want to show you the manuscripts, because these exist in manuscript, right? These enormous, super densely written Arabic manuscripts And so this one, if our catalog is to be trusted, is from the 8th century. This is from around the fall of the Umayyad Caliphate. This one is a 9th century one that has a text written by the Caliph al-Muawiyah. Yes, the first Umayyad Caliph. It has some extra commentary on it, but the text in this is composed in the 7th century. This is a 9th century copy from around 875, so it's almost contemporary to this game. Obviously, their condition is rough, right? I was not sure if it was actually an 8th century manuscript, because Arabic manuscripts really don't change that much from the 8th century to the 18th century. But if you look at it, I buy that that's 1,000 years old. I mean, that's a crunchy manuscript. Right, that's a bit crunchy. So, what's the takeaway here? It's not that there are secret historical sources buried in these manuscripts that no one has read. Because we actually do have a detailed sense of what texts are in each of these manuscripts. That's okay. But when we're thinking about our sources, right, oftentimes we're looking at things with a survival condition like this. And that means that there is often information or fragmentary information or quotations from earlier material that is damaged, incomplete, deeply buried in damaged manuscripts, and otherwise hard to access. So our reliance on sources like Al-Tabari, and the fact that we have a good English rendition of him, is a huge boon for our rendition of Baghdad in this period. And so it is remarkable that we have the depth of sources that we do have, and remarkable that we are able to do the sort of reconstructive work that we're going to see in just a moment in the game. So that concludes the PowerPoint portion of the stream. It only took an hour and a half. Do you feel enlightened, chat? Do you feel like we now understand at least enough of a snapshot of the very, very short version of the rise of Islam to position ourselves in 861? Right? We are in the largest city in the world at a moment of crisis. Right? I am willing to bet, I have not hit the new game button yet, so I don't know, but I'm willing to bet that the prologue of this game is going to end with the assassination of Al-Mutawakkil, and that Basim is going to be caught up in that conspiracy. And so, knowing how we got here, and really what are the traditions and some of the poets and scholars and people that we should expect to see, is super duper important, I think, to have a good history time. And, I mean, it's going to be super duper interesting. And thank you for the Hail Hydrate. So, we are going to take a very short ad break. Just so that we don't get any ads during the start of stream, and so that I can stand up and stretch and take off my tie. We're done lecturing, I can take off the tie now. And then we are going to hop into it and do the first hour or two of Assassin's Creed Mirage. You're expecting a costume change? Well, maybe not too much of one, but certainly get rid of the tie, get a bit comfier. So, I shall leave you as always with our questing snails. If you have enjoyed this so far, do consider dropping a follow, and if you want to access a whole bunch of fabulous medieval emotes, including things from Ethiopia, Malaysia, the Middle East, etc., consider subscribing to the channel. Chat, stare at all the non-subscribers. Chat, stare at the non-subscribers. I believe in you. Then, we'll be back in just a couple minutes to start off Assassin's Creed Mirage. I'm so excited. Let's do it. Exactly. So, do not go anywhere. We shall be right back.